Staff Sergeant Declan Voss had been dead for 11 days when he walked through the gates of Forward Operating Base Schenck. At least, that was what his unit believed, what the memorial service had concluded, what the folded flag sent to his mother in Kentucky had confirmed. But dead men do not walk. They do not stumble through security checkpoints with cracked lips and hollow eyes. And they certainly do not grab the first soldier they see by the collar and ask a question that will unravel everything this base thinks it knows. Where is the woman who made the shot? The young specialist he had grabbed did not understand the question. Nobody would. Not yet. 300 meters away, in the weapons maintenance facility on the eastern edge of the base, Sergeant First Class Yolanda Pemberton heard the commotion beginning. Shouts near the main gate. Voices rising. The particular pitch that meant something unusual had disrupted the rhythm of another scorching afternoon in Logar Province. She did not look up from the M249 light machine gun spread across her workbench in 47 precise pieces. She had learned years ago that curiosity was a luxury she could not afford. Before we continue with what happens when a dead man starts asking questions no one can answer, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Maybe you have known someone whose real abilities were hidden in plain sight. The maintenance bay door banged open. Chief Warrant Officer Craig Dunmore stood in the frame, his bulk blocking the harsh sunlight, his face wearing the expression of a man who had been interrupted from something important, which in his case meant the air-conditioned comfort of his office and the hunting magazine he kept hidden in his desk drawer. "Pemberton," he said, "you hear that noise out there?" She kept her hands moving. Cleaning, inspecting, reassembling. "Yes, Chief." Some ranger walked in from the desert. 11 days missing. Everyone thought he was dead. Her hands did not pause. "That is good news, Chief. His family will be relieved." Dunmore snorted. "The man is raving, talking about some impossible sniper shot, saying a woman saved him from 4 kilometers out." He laughed, the sound carrying the particular cruelty of a man who enjoyed watching others fail. 4 kilometers. A woman. Can you imagine? Yolanda said nothing. Her fingers found a speck of carbon fouling that did not exist and cleaned it anyway. "Command is scrambling," Dunmore continued. "Intel is losing their minds. The whole base is about to turn into a circus." He stepped closer, lowering his voice in that way he always did when he wanted her to feel small. "So whatever you were planning to do today, cancel it. I need you focused. The Colonel's people are going to want every weapon on this base inspection ready by tomorrow. That means you work through the night if you have to." He smiled. "Think you can handle that, wrench turner?" "Yes, Chief." He lingered a moment longer, waiting for something. Resistance, maybe. Some spark of defiance he could stomp on. When she gave him nothing, he grunted and walked away, letting the door slam behind him. Yolanda Pemberton sat motionless for exactly 4 seconds. Then she finished reassembling the M249 with movements so fluid and practiced they looked like a magic trick. 9.3 seconds. Faster than anyone else on this base could manage, including Dunmore, who had never actually timed himself because he had always had her to do the work he took credit for. The noise outside was growing. She could hear it now through the thin walls. Words carrying on the desert wind. "Impossible." Miracle. For 1,000 meters. Her hands, steady as granite through 16 years of service, began to tremble. A knock at the side door. Softer than Dunmore's assault. She knew that knock. "Come in, Kendrick." Sergeant Kendrick O'Yelleran slipped inside, his young face tight with barely contained excitement. He was 27, 3 years into his Army career, and he looked at Yolanda Pemberton the way soldiers look at senior NCOs who actually know what they are doing, with respect bordering on reverence. "Sergeant P," he said, "you're not going to believe what is happening. I heard. The missing ranger came back." O'Yelleran shook his head. "It is more than that. He is telling everyone that someone saved him. Someone on this base. He claims insurgents were transporting him through a valley when their heads just started exploding. No sound, no warning. He counted 4 kills from a single shooter at a distance. He calculated at 3,820 meters. Yolanda continued organizing her tools. That would be impossible. The current record is around 3,500 meters. Canadian sniper in Iraq. I know, O'Yelleran said. Everyone knows. That is why Intel thinks he is traumatized. Delusional from dehydration and captivity. But Sergeant P, he paused, his voice dropping. He keeps saying it was a woman. He does not know why he knows. He just does. Something about the way the shots were placed. The precision. He says he has never seen shooting like that. And he is asking to speak to every woman on this base. The moment passed. Voss collapsed before he could take a step toward her, his body finally surrendering to 11 days of deprivation and trauma. Medics swarmed him. Soldiers shouted for stretchers. The chaos swallowed him whole, and Yolanda stepped back from the window, her heart pounding against her ribs like it was trying to escape. She had been careful. So careful. 16 years of careful. By evening, the rumors had infected every corner of FOB Shank like a virus with no cure. Yolanda heard them in the chow hall, in the latrines, in the spaces between buildings where soldiers gathered to smoke and speculate. The impossible shot. The ghost sniper. The woman nobody could identify. For kilometers, a young corporal said to his buddy as Yolanda passed with her tray. That is like shooting a target the size of a quarter from 2.5 miles away. In wind. Through heat shimmer. It is not possible. His friend shrugged. Maybe he imagined it. Dude was out there 11 days. Sun does crazy things to your brain. Yolanda found an empty table in the corner. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing, listening to everything. 3 tables away, Dunmore held court with a group of junior officers. His voice carried the way it always did when he wanted to be heard. I have supervised every weapon system on this base for 2 years, he announced. If we had some kind of super sniper hiding among us, I would know about it. He laughed, and the officers laughed with him. Trust me, there is no woman on this base who can make a shot like that. Most of them can barely qualify on the standard range. The officers nodded. Of course. Dunmore was the expert. Dunmore knew everything. Yolanda finished her meal and left without a word. That night, she did what she always did when the walls closed in. She waited until 0200, when the base settled into its deepest sleep. Then she slipped out of her quarters with a small bag over her shoulder and walked to the eastern perimeter, where a broken section of fence led to a ridge that officially did not exist on any patrol route. The rifle came out of the bag in pieces. She assembled it by feel alone, her fingers knowing every curve and angle the way a musician knows their instrument. This weapon was not in any inventory. It did not exist on any manifest. It had been given to her 9 years ago by people who also did not exist, and she had carried it through 4 deployments, always hidden, always ready. She settled into position, breathed, let the scope show her the darkness. The valley stretched out below, empty now, but 8 days ago, she had watched a convoy move through that valley, had seen the prisoners being transported, had recognized the distinctive posture of an American soldier, even from 3,820 meters away. She had not planned to take the shot, had told herself she was only observing, only gathering intelligence she would never report. Then she had seen them raise their weapons toward the prisoner, seen the execution about to happen, and her grandfather's voice had whispered in her ear, breathe, squeeze, follow through. Yolanda stayed on the ridge until the first hint of dawn touched the mountains. Then she packed her rifle, erased her traces, and walked back to base to begin another day of being nobody. But when she entered the maintenance bay, O'Yelleran was already there, waiting. His face carried a strange expression she could not quite read. Staff Sergeant Voss is awake, he said. Medical cleared him for limited interviews. Intel has been with him for 3 hours already. Yolanda moved to her workbench, started laying out tools for the day. Good. Maybe they can figure out what really happened to him. O'Yelleran did not move. He is asking for you specifically, Sergeant P. Her hands froze for just a fraction of a second. Me. Why would he ask for a weapons tech? I do not know. But Captain Slaughter from Intel is on his way here right now. He has questions. As if summoned by his name, the maintenance bay door opened. Captain Reed Slaughter stepped inside, his intelligence officer insignia catching the overhead lights. He was thin, precise, The kind of man who noticed everything and revealed nothing. "Sergeant First Class Pemberton," he said, "I need a moment of your time." Yolanda straightened. "Of course, sir. How can I help?" Slaughter studied her the way a scientist studies a specimen. "Staff Sergeant Voss has made some extraordinary claims. Among them, he insists that the shooter who saved him was female. He cannot explain how he knows this. He describes it as intuition based on the shooting pattern, the precision, the methodology." He paused. "He is asked to meet with every woman on this base who has any connection to weapon systems. Your name is at the top of that list." "I'm a technician, sir. I repair weapons. I do not fire them. Your qualification scores say otherwise." Slaughter pulled a small notebook from his pocket. "Expert rating on every weapons system you have touched. Highest scores in your MOS for 6 consecutive years." He looked up. Curious record for someone who claims she does not shoot. Yolanda met his gaze without flinching. "Knowing how a weapon works is different from using it in combat, sir. I understand the mechanics. That does not make me a sniper." Slaughter held her stare for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Staff Sergeant Voss would like to meet you regardless. Medical has approved a short visit. Will you come with me?" It was not really a question. She followed him out of the maintenance bay, feeling O'Yellerin's eyes on her back the entire way. The walk to the medical facility took 4 minutes. 4 minutes to construct her mask. 4 minutes to become the woman she had pretended to be for 16 years. The woman who was nobody special. The woman who fixed things and stayed quiet. The woman who had never made an impossible shot in a valley that did not matter. Voss was sitting up when she entered. His eyes found hers immediately, and something electric passed between them. Recognition. Certainty. A connection that defied explanation. "It was you," he said. His voice was raw, damaged by days of thirst and silence, but absolutely certain. "I do not know how I know, but it was you." Yolanda did not blink. 16 years of discipline held her face perfectly neutral while her pulse hammered in her throat. "Staff Sergeant Voss," she said calmly, "I am sorry for what you went through, but I am a weapons technician. I fix rifles. I do not fire them." Voss leaned forward, his hollow eyes burning with an intensity that 11 days of captivity had not dimmed. "I was in that valley, handbound, on my knees, for insurgents around me, arguing about whether to film my execution or just dump my body in a ditch." He paused, letting the words settle. Then the first one dropped. No sound, no warning, just a small hole appearing in his skull, and then he was gone. The other 3 did not even understand what was happening. They died looking confused. Captain Slaughter stood in the corner, watching, recording, missing nothing. "I counted the bodies," Voss continued, "calculated the angles based on where they fell. Whoever made those shots was positioned on the eastern ridge overlooking the valley. I know that terrain. I have patrolled it. From that ridge to where I was kneeling is 3,800 meters. Give or take 20. Yolanda kept her voice steady. "That would be the longest confirmed kill in military history. By a significant margin. I know what it would be." Voss's jaw tightened. "I also know what I saw. For perfect shots. For bodies. And something about the pattern. The spacing. The precision. It was not brutal. It was surgical. Almost gentle. If that makes any sense." He shook his head. "I have seen a lot of people die, Sergeant. I have never seen anyone die like that. Whoever pulled that trigger was not just skilled. They were an artist." Slaughter stepped forward. "Staff Sergeant Voss, you understand how this sounds. You are describing something that is functionally impossible. I understand exactly how it sounds, sir." Voss did not take his eyes off Yolanda. "That is why I need to find whoever did it. Because if I am right, then someone on this base has abilities that are being completely wasted fixing other people's weapons." The room went silent. Yolanda could feel Slaughter's analytical gaze boring into her, could feel the weight of Voss's certainty pressing against her carefully constructed facade. "I appreciate you sharing your experience with me," she said finally. "I hope you find the answers you're looking for, but I'm not the person you're searching for." She turned and walked out before either man could respond. The sunshine hit her face like an accusation. She made it halfway across the base before Slaughter caught up with her, his long stride eating the distance between them. Sergeant Pemberton. A moment. She stopped. Turned. Sir. Slaughter studied her with those cold, calculating eyes. I have been doing intelligence work for 15 years. I have interrogated insurgents, foreign operatives, and American soldiers suspected of everything from treason to war crimes. He stepped closer. I know when someone is lying to me. Yolanda said nothing. Your service record is interesting, he continued. 16 years of exemplary performance. Expert ratings across the board. But there are gaps. Periods where your file goes strangely quiet. And there is a redacted section from 2016 that even I cannot access. He tilted his head. What happened in 2016, Sergeant? I was stationed at Fort Benning, sir. Weapons maintenance. Nothing unusual. Fort Benning. Slaughter nodded slowly. Interesting. Because I made some calls this morning. There is no record of you at Fort Benning during that period. No signing logs. No housing assignments. No personnel records whatsoever. He paused. For 7 months in 2016, Sergeant First Class Yolanda Pemberton essentially did not exist. Her heart was pounding now, but her face remained stone. I cannot explain administrative errors, sir. The Army's paperwork is not always perfect. No, it is not. Slaughter smiled, but there was no warmth in it. But this does not feel like an error. This feels like someone erased you on purpose. And in my experience, people only get erased when they're doing something the regular Army is not supposed to know about. He let the implication hang in the air between them. I'll be looking into this further, Sergeant. I suggest you think carefully about whether there is anything you want to tell me before I find on my own. He walked away, leaving her standing alone in the middle of the base. That evening, Yolanda sat in her quarters, staring at her grandfather's photograph. His eyes seemed to follow her, judging, understanding, forgiving. A soft knock at the door. She opened it to find Master Sergeant Theodora Birch standing in the hallway. Birch was 52 years old, built like a tank wrapped in maternal warmth, and she ran the medical section with an iron fist concealed in a velvet glove. She was also one of the only people on this base who had known Yolanda before Afghanistan. Can I come in? Birch asked. Yolanda stepped aside. Birch settled into the only chair, her eyes sweeping the sparse quarters. Still living like a ghost, I see. No pictures. No personal touches. Nothing that says Yolanda Pemberton actually exists. I like to travel light. Birch snorted. You like to be ready to disappear. There's a difference. She leaned forward. I heard about the ranger. About his claims. And I saw Slaughter leaving your area today, looking like a dog who just caught a scent. Yolanda sat on her bunk. It does not concern me. It should. Birch's voice softened. I remember when you arrived here, yo. Fresh from wherever you actually were. Not Fort Benning. We both know that. You had a look in your eyes. The look of someone who had been somewhere that does not officially exist. Doing things that never officially happened. Teddy, I never asked, Birch continued. I figured you had your reasons. But now people are asking questions. Dangerous questions. And I need to know if you're safe. Yolanda looked at her old friend. At the concern written across her weathered face. I'm always safe, she said quietly. That is what I was trained to be. The next 3 days brought a suffocating rhythm of suspicion and surveillance. Yolanda felt eyes on her everywhere she went. Slaughter had people watching her. She spotted them in the chow hall, near the maintenance bay, lingering outside her quarters at odd hours. Amateur work, really. Whoever had trained Slaughter's people had not trained them well enough. But it was Dunmore who made her life truly miserable. He appeared in the maintenance bay on the second morning with a clipboard and a smile that promised nothing good. Inspection time, Pemberton. Command wants every weapon system on this base evaluated and documented. That means inventory checks, serial number verification, and condition reports. He dropped the clipboard on her workbench. All 437 weapons. By Friday. That is 3 days, Chief. For work that normally takes 2 weeks. Then I suggest you stop complaining and start working. He leaned closer, his breath sour with coffee and malice. Unless you have somewhere else you need to be. Some secret mission you are running when you think no one is watching. Yolanda kept her expression blank. I will have it done, Chief. Dunmore lingered, clearly hoping for more resistance. When she gave him nothing, he grunted and walked away. O'Yelleran appeared at her side the moment Dunmore was gone. That is impossible, Sergeant P. Even with me helping full-time, we cannot inventory every weapon on base in 3 days. Then we had better get started. They worked through the day and into the night. O'Yelleran proved himself invaluable, his young hands quick and his attention to detail sharp. By midnight, they had processed 87 weapons. 350 to go. Sergeant P. O'Yelleran said during a brief break. Can I ask you something? You can ask. Where do you go at night? He held up his hands quickly. I'm not spying on you. I just notice things. You leave your quarters around 0200 sometimes. Come back just before dawn. And when you come back, you smell like gunpowder and desert dust. Yolanda considered her answer carefully. Some questions are better left unasked. Kendrick. I know. He nodded slowly. I just want you to know that whatever you are doing, whoever you really are, I am on your side. You are the best NCO I have ever served under. You actually teach instead of just ordering. You treat people like they matter. His voice dropped, and I saw your hands when the ranger came back. I saw them shaking. You never shake. She looked at this young sergeant who noticed too much and said too little. In another life, he would have made an excellent intelligence operative. Thank you, Kendrick. Now, let's get back to work. On the third day, Slaughter returned. He found her elbow deep in an M240 machine gun, grease smeared across her forearms, exhaustion carved into her face. Sergeant Pemberton, I have an update on my investigation. She did not look up. I was not aware I was under investigation, sir. You are not. Not officially. He clasped his hands behind his back. But I've been making inquiries about those gaps in your record. The 2016 period specifically. I reached out to some contacts at JSOC, Special Operations Command. Even made a few calls to people at the Pentagon. And what did you find? Slaughter's jaw tightened. Nothing. Every inquiry I made was shut down within hours. Classified. Above my clearance. Need to know basis. And, apparently, I do not need to know. He stepped closer. Do you understand how unusual that is, Sergeant? I am an O3 intelligence officer with top secret clearance, and I cannot access information about a weapons technician. Yolanda finally looked up. Maybe there is nothing to access, sir. Maybe I really am just a weapons technician with some administrative gaps in my paperwork. Maybe. Slaughter's eyes narrowed. Or maybe you're something else entirely. Something that someone very powerful wants to keep hidden. Before she could respond, the maintenance bay door crashed open. Dunmore stood in the doorway, his face flushed with triumph. Captain Slaughter, he announced. I need to report a serious violation. He pointed at Yolanda. I have discovered unauthorized equipment in Sergeant Pemberton's personal storage locker. Yolanda's blood turned to ice. Dunmore stepped aside, revealing 2 MPs behind him. They carried a long black case between them. A case she recognized immediately. This rifle is not on any inventory, Dunmore continued. It is not registered to this base or any unit in Afghanistan. He smiled, savoring his victory. I believe Sergeant Pemberton has some explaining to do. Slaughter looked at the case, then at Yolanda. His expression shifted from suspicion to something more dangerous. Certainty. Open it, he ordered. The MPs laid the case on her workbench and unlatched the clasps. The lid swung open, revealing the weapon inside. Custom-built, precision-engineered, capable of accuracy at distances that most shooters could not even imagine. Yolanda stared at her rifle, at the tool she had carried for 9 years, at the evidence that would destroy everything she had built. Sergeant Pemberton, Slaughter said quietly, I think it is time you told me the truth. In the corner of the room, O'Yelleran stood frozen. His eyes moved from the rifle to Yolanda's face, and she watched understanding dawn in his expression. Not shock, not betrayal, just the quiet confirmation of something he had suspected all along. The truth, sir, Yolanda said slowly, is above your pay grade. Then I suggest we find someone whose pay grade it is not above. Slaughter nodded to the MPs. Sergeant Pemberton, you are confined to quarters pending a formal investigation. Do not attempt to leave this base. They escorted her out into the harsh afternoon sun. Dunmore watched her go, his smile wide and satisfied. He had finally won. After 2 years of her making him look incompetent simply by being competent, he had finally found a way to destroy her. What he did not know, what none of them knew, was that her rifle being discovered was not the end of her story. It was only the beginning. The quarters they confined her to were 8 feet by 10 feet. A bunk, a footlocker, a small window that looked out onto nothing but concrete blast walls. Yolanda had slept in worse places. She had slept in holes dug into frozen mountainsides. She had slept in the back of transport vehicles bouncing over roads that did not exist on any map. She had slept with one eye open in countries whose names she was forbidden to speak. This room was a luxury by comparison, but the walls still pressed in. The first day passed in silence. No visitors, no information, just the distant sounds of the base continuing its operations without her. She did push-ups until her arms burned, sit-ups until her stomach cramped, anything to keep her mind from spiraling into the dark places it wanted to go. On the second day, Slaughter came. He entered without knocking, a folder tucked under his arm, his face arranged in careful neutrality. "Sergeant Pemberton, I have been authorized to offer you a deal." She remained seated on her bunk. "I am listening." "The rifle we found is problematic. It is not military issue. It is not registered anywhere. Ballistic analysis suggests it is capable of accuracy at extreme distances that exceed anything in our current inventory." He opened the folder, glancing at pages she could not see. Possession of unauthorized weapons on a forward operating base is a serious offense. You could be looking at court-martial, dishonorable discharge, prison time. Yolanda said nothing. However, Slaughter closed the folder. "There are people who believe you may have information relevant to ongoing operations. Information about capabilities that could prove valuable if properly documented." He met her eyes. "Tell me about the shot. Tell me how you made it. Give me something I can take to my superiors, and this all goes away." She considered his offer, considered the easy path it represented. Confession, documentation, becoming a resource to be studied and exploited. "No." Slaughter blinked. "No. The shot you are asking about does not exist. I am a weapons technician. I fix rifles. I do not fire them." His composure cracked, frustration bleeding through. "You understand what you are throwing away. I am offering you a way out, a chance to turn this into something positive instead of letting it destroy your career." "My career?" Yolanda almost laughed. "You think I care about my career? Then what do you care about?" She thought about her grandfather, about the promise she had made at his grave, about the years she had spent becoming invisible so that she could do the only thing that mattered. "I care about being left alone," she said quietly. "I care about doing my job without interference. I care about the soldiers on this base whose weapons I maintain, whose lives depend on equipment that functions perfectly because I make it function perfectly." She stood, and Slaughter took an involuntary step back. "I do not care about recognition. I do not care about glory. And I definitely do not care about giving you something you can put in a file and show to your superiors to make yourself look important." Slaughter's face hardened. "Then you leave me no choice. The investigation will proceed. And when I find the evidence I need, and I will find it, you will wish you had taken my offer." He left, the door locked behind him. That night, O'Yellerin found a way to reach her. She heard the soft tap on her window just after midnight. His face appeared in the small square of glass, barely visible in the darkness. "Sergeant P," he whispered, "I brought you something." A small package slipped through the gap at the bottom of the window. She opened it to find food from the chow hall, still warm, a bottle of water, and a folded note. She read the note by the dim light filtering through the window. "The whole base is talking. Half of them think you are a spy. The other half think Voss is crazy and Dunmore is framing you for something. Either way, you have more friends than you know. Birch says to stay strong. She's working on something. And Voss has been asking to see you. They will not let him. He says he owes you his life, and he is not going to let them railroad you for saving it. Stay strong. We are with you." Yolanda folded the note carefully and tucked it into her pocket. On the third day, everything changed. She heard the helicopter before she saw it. The distinctive thump of rotors cutting through the morning air. Not a standard transport. Something smaller. Faster. The kind of aircraft that carried people who did not want to be noticed. An hour later, her door opened. Two figures stood in the hallway. One was Slaughter, his face pale and confused. The other was a woman Yolanda had not seen in 9 years. A woman she had hoped never to see again. Colonel Marguerite Tan wore civilian clothes, but she carried herself with the unmistakable bearing of someone who had commanded soldiers in places that did not officially exist. Her hair was silver now, cut short and practical. Her eyes were exactly as Yolanda remembered them. Sharp, knowing, dangerous. "Hello, Sergeant Pemberton," Colonel Tan said. "It has been a long time." Slaughter looked between them, clearly lost. "Colonel, you know this woman." Tan smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Know her." "Captain, I created her." She stepped into the room, and Yolanda felt 9 years of careful hiding crumble into dust. "We need to talk," Tan said, "about a shot that officially never happened, and about what happens now that everyone knows it did." Colonel Tan dismissed Slaughter with a single glance. The intelligence officer hesitated, clearly wanting to stay, but something in Tan's expression made him retreat without argument. The door closed, leaving the two women alone. Yolanda remained standing. 9 years, Colonel. 9 years, Tan agreed. "You look good. Older. Tired. But good. You look the same." Tan laughed softly. "Liar." She moved to the small window, gazing out at the blast walls. "I told you to disappear. To become nobody. To forget everything we taught you and live a quiet life fixing other people's weapons. I did exactly that." "No." Tan turned to face her. "You did most of that. But you cannot forget. Cannot stop being what we made you." She pulled a small tablet from her jacket and tapped the screen. Satellite imagery. Thermal. Trajectory analysis. She held it up for Yolanda to see. 3,820 meters. 4 targets. 4 kills. Shot placement so precise that our analysts thought it was a drone strike until they realized there was no drone in the area. Yolanda looked at the images, looked at the proof of what she had done. "He was going to die," she said quietly. "The Ranger. They were going to execute him. I cannot just watch." "I know." Tan set the tablet aside. "That is why I am here. Not to punish you. To protect you. Protect me from what? For what this shot represents." Tan sat on the edge of the bunk, suddenly looking every one of her 63 years. "Do you understand what you did, Yolanda? 3,820 meters. The current confirmed record is 3,540 meters. A Canadian sniper in Iraq. That shot made international headlines. It was studied, analyzed, celebrated. This is different. Yes, this is different. Because if this shot becomes public, if the world learns that an American soldier made the longest confirmed kill in military history, questions will be asked. Questions about how. Questions about training. Questions about a program that was supposed to be shut down and erased 9 years ago. Project Longbow. The name hung in the air between them like a ghost. Tan nadit slowly. Project Longbow. Our little experiment in identifying and training exceptional long-range shooters. No gender restrictions. No MOS requirements. Just pure talent, honed to a razor edge. She paused. We found 37 candidates over 5 years. Trained them in techniques that pushed the boundaries of what we thought was possible. And then the program was terminated. Budget cuts, they said. Strategic reprioritization. Everyone was scattered back to regular units. Files were sealed. Officially, Longbow never existed. But we still exist, Yolanda said. The people you trained. We're still out there. Yes. And most of you have done exactly what I asked. Stayed quiet. Stayed invisible. Used your skills only when absolutely necessary and never in ways that could be documented. Tan's voice hardened. Until now, I saved a man's life. You exposed yourself. You exposed the program. You created a problem that has already reached the Pentagon. Tan stood, pacing the small room. The Joint Chiefs are asking questions. Congressional oversight committees are sniffing around. Everyone wants to know how a weapons technician made an impossible shot, and they will not stop digging until they find answers. So what happens now? Ten stopped pacing. Now you have a choice. She pulled a folder from inside her jacket. Two options were written on the cover page. Option 1. Full classification. Everything about this incident gets buried. The shot never happened. Voss's account gets attributed to trauma and dehydration. You go back to being a weapons technician, and we pretend this conversation never occurred. You stay hidden. You stay safe. But you never get acknowledged for what you did. And option 2. Controlled disclosure. We acknowledge the shot through official channels. Limited recognition within Special Operations Command. Your skills get documented and utilized properly. 10 met her eyes. But your life changes forever. No more anonymity. No more hiding. You become an asset. A resource. A name in files that people with stars on their shoulders will read and discuss. Yolanda considered both paths. The safety of shadows. The burden of light. Before she could answer, the base alarm began to wail. Both women froze. That particular siren meant only one thing. Incoming attack. And not a small one. Tan moved to the window. Her face went pale. Mother of God. Yolanda joined her. Through the small square of glass, she could see chaos erupting across the base. Soldiers running for defensive positions. Smoke rising from the northern perimeter. The distinctive crack of gunfire splitting the air. Multiple breach points, Tan said, her voice shifting into command mode. This is coordinated. They must have been planning this for weeks. Another explosion shook the building. Closer this time, Yolanda looked at the colonel. Then she looked at the door that separated her from everything happening outside. I need my rifle, she said. Tan held her gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. The decision about your future can wait. Right now, this base needs you to be exactly what you are. She opened the door, and Yolanda Pemberton stepped out of the shadows for the last time. The base was bleeding. Yolanda moved through the chaos with a focus that blocked out everything except what mattered. The maintenance bay, her rifle, the case that Dunmore had so triumphantly confiscated was still there, sitting on a table in the corner, like evidence waiting for a trial that would never come. She assembled the weapon in 11 seconds, muscle memory taking over, hands that had repeated this motion 10,000 times moving without conscious thought. O'Yelleran found her before she reached the door. Sergeant P. His face was streaked with dust and sweat. He carried an M4 and wore the expression of a young soldier who had just discovered that combat was nothing like training. They hit us from 3 directions. Northern perimeter is almost overrun. We have casualties everywhere. Where's a command post? Still operational. Colonel Tan is there now, coordinating defense. He paused, looking at the rifle in her hands. That weapon is not standard issue. No, it is not. She pushed past him into the hellscape outside. The air tasted like smoke and copper. Gunfire crackled from multiple directions, overlapping into a continuous roar. She saw soldiers crouched behind barriers, returning fire at enemies they could barely see. She saw medics dragging wounded toward the aid station. She saw fear on faces that were too young to understand what fear really meant. And she saw the problem immediately. The insurgents had taken the high ground. 3 positions on the ridgeline to the east, pouring suppressive fire down onto the base. As long as those positions held, the defenders could not organize an effective counterattack. She knew that ridgeline. She had walked it 100 times in darkness, had memorized every fold in the terrain, every rock that could provide cover, every angle that offered a clear line of sight. O'Yelleran appeared at her shoulder. What do you need? A spotter. Someone to watch my back. She looked at him. Are you volunteering? He swallowed hard, then nodded. Tell me what to do. They moved along the eastern perimeter, staying low, using the blast walls for cover. Bullets snapped overhead. An explosion somewhere behind them sent debris raining down. O'Yelleran flinched at every sound, but he kept moving, kept following. Yolanda found the position she wanted. A reinforced bunker with a narrow firing slit that faced the ridge. She settled into place, adjusting her rifle, letting her breathing slow. Range to the first position, she said. O'Yelleran fumbled with the rangefinder she had handed him. 840 meters. She adjusted. Breathed. found her target through the scope. An insurgent manning a heavy machine gun, spraying rounds into the base below. Wind. O'Yelleran checked the small weather device. 6 miles per hour. Left to right. She made the calculation automatically. Adjusted her aim. Squeezed the trigger. The insurgent dropped. O'Yelleran stared. Holy. Next target. Stay focused. They worked through the first position systematically. For shooters. For shots. For bodies. The machine gun went silent. Sergeant P. O'Yelleran breathed. How are you doing this? Later. Second position. Range. 1,200 meters. Farther now. The calculations more complex. The margin for error smaller. She took a breath. Held it. Squeezed. The second position fell in 3 shots. Word began to spread. Soldiers who had been pinned down started to notice that the enemy fire was diminishing. Started to look toward the eastern bunker where a weapons technician was doing impossible things. Dunmore found them between the second and third positions. He stumbled into the bunker, his face pale, his hands shaking. When he saw Yolanda behind the rifle, his expression twisted into something ugly. What the hell do you think you are doing, Pemberton? You are confined to quarters. You are under investigation. He grabbed her shoulder. Stand down immediately. Yolanda did not look away from her scope. Remove your hand, Chief. I am giving you a direct order. Now O'Yelleran stepped forward. Chief Warrant Officer Dunmore. With respect, she is the only thing keeping this base from being overrun. Maybe this is not the time. Dunmore's face reddened. I do not care what she is doing. She is a criminal. An unauthorized. A bullet cracked through the firing slit, missing Dunmore's head by inches. He dropped to the floor, whimpering. Yolanda finally looked at him. Looked at this man who had spent 2 years diminishing her, stealing credit for her work, making her life small and miserable. Stay down, she said coldly. Stay quiet. And stay out of my way. She turned back to her scope. Third position. Range. O'Yelleran checked. 1,500 meters. 3 shooters visible. They have a mortar. She could see it. The mortar team setting up, preparing to rain explosives down on the aid station where wounded soldiers were being treated. Wind. 8 miles per hour. Still left to right. Gusting. 1,500 meters in gusting wind. 3 targets. 1 chance before they launched. Yolanda closed her eyes for just a moment. Heard her grandfather's voice one more time. Breathe. Squeeze. Follow through. She opened her eyes, found her center, and began to shoot. The first insurgent fell before he could load the round. The second died, reaching for the weapon his partner had dropped. The third tried to run and made it exactly 4 steps before Yolanda's bullet found him. The mortar never fired. Behind her, Dunmore lay on the floor with his hands over his head, trembling like a child in a thunderstorm. Around her, the tide of battle began to turn. The enemy positions on the ridge had fallen silent. But the attack was far from over. Yolanda scanned the terrain through her scope, searching for the next threat. The insurgents had committed significant forces to this assault. Too many to be a random strike. This was planned, coordinated. Someone had decided that FOB Shank needed to fall today. O'Yelleran pressed his radio to his ear, listening to the chatter. Command says northern perimeter is holding, but barely. Western Gate took heavy casualties. And there's something else. What? Voss. He left the medical facility, grabbed a weapon, and joined the fight at the Western Gate. Yolanda felt something tighten in her chest. The man had been captive for 11 days, had barely recovered enough to walk, and now he was back in combat, fighting for a base that had doubted his sanity. "You should not be out there," she said. "Try telling him that." O'Yelleran almost smiled. He said something about owing a debt he intends to repay. A new sound cut through the gunfire. The distant thump of rotors. But not American rotors. Something older. Soviet era. The insurgents had air support. Yolanda spotted it through her scope. A battered Mi-17 helicopter approaching from the northeast, moving low and fast. Door gunners visible on both sides. It was heading straight for the command post. "They have a helicopter," O'Yelleran said, his voice cracking. "I see it. What do we do?" She calculated the distance, the speed, the angle. Hitting a moving aircraft was nearly impossible at this range. The bullet would need to travel over 2,000 meters while the target moved perpendicular to her position. Nearly impossible, but not completely impossible. She adjusted her aim, led the target by a margin that felt more like instinct than mathematics. Breathed. The helicopter lurched suddenly, its tail rotor sputtering. It spun once, twice, then crashed into the desert floor 300 meters outside the perimeter. A fireball bloomed against the morning sky. O'Yelleran stared at her. "Did you just? We need to move. They will have seen our muzzle flash." They relocated to a secondary position as enemy fighters began focusing fire on where they had been. Yolanda moved with practiced efficiency, her rifle cradled against her chest, her eyes never stopping their constant scan of the environment. The new position offered a different angle on the battlefield. From here, she could see the Western Gate where the fighting was most intense. Could see American soldiers pinned behind burning vehicles while insurgents advanced through the smoke. And she could see Voss. He was crouched behind a concrete barrier, blood soaking through a bandage on his arm, firing controlled bursts at enemies she could not see from her angle. Even wounded, even exhausted, he moved like the ranger he was. Professional, precise, deadly, but he was also exposed, and she could see what he could not. 3 insurgents flanking his position from the south, using the smoke as cover. "Range," she demanded. O'Yelleran fumbled with the device. 2,100 meters to the Western Gate. 2,100 meters. Through smoke. At targets moving in unpredictable patterns. She did not hesitate. The first flanker dropped. The second turned toward the sound of his falling comrade and caught a bullet through his chest. The third tried to retreat and died with his back to her. Voss looked up. Somehow, across 2,000 meters of chaos and carnage, he knew exactly where she was. He raised one hand in acknowledgement, in gratitude, in recognition of a debt that could never truly be repaid. Then he turned back to the fight. "Sergeant P." O'Yelleran's voice was urgent now. "Command says they have identified the enemy commander. He is coordinating the assault from a position on the eastern ridge." She swung her scope to the east, scanned the terrain she knew so well. Found him. He stood in the open, confident in his distance from a base. A radio in one hand, binoculars in the other. Watching his forces assault the Americans like a general observing a war game. Range, 3,100 meters. Yolanda felt her breath catch. That was farther than the 3 positions she had already neutralized. Farther than the helicopter shot. Almost as far as the valley where she had saved Voss. Wind, 11 miles per hour. Variable, shifting between left to right and head-on. Variable wind at over 3,000 meters. The bullet would be in flight for nearly 4 seconds. In that time, any gust could push it meters off target. "I cannot calculate the adjustments," O'Yelleran admitted. "This is beyond anything I know." Yolanda stared through her scope at the man responsible for this attack. The man whose orders had killed American soldiers. The man who stood in the open because he believed himself untouchable. Her grandfather had taught her that some shots were not about mathematics. Some shots were about faith. About trusting 10,000 hours of practice. About believing that the bullet would find its way. She made her adjustments. Felt the wind on her face. Watched the distant figure through her scope. Breathe. Squeeze. Follow through. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. For seconds of silence. Then the enemy commander crumpled to the ground, and the voice coordinating the assault went permanently silent. O'Yelleran whispered something that might have been a prayer. Across the base, the insurgent attack began to collapse. Without coordination, without leadership, the fighters became individuals instead of an army. Some retreated, some surrendered, some died fighting. By noon, it was over. Yolanda lowered her rifle and closed her eyes. Her hands were steady. They were always steady. But somewhere deep inside, in a place she rarely acknowledged, something had shifted. Something had broken free. There would be no more hiding after today. The silence after battle is a sound unto itself. Yolanda sat in the bunker as the base began its grim accounting. Casualty reports filtering through the radio. Damage assessments. Calls for medical support. the machinery of war grinding forward even as the fighting stopped. O'Yelleran sat beside her, his young face aged by what he had witnessed, what he had helped accomplish. He had not spoken since the enemy commander fell. Finally, he found his voice. "Sergeant P. What you did today? Why, what you do?" He shook his head. "I have never seen anything like it. I did not know anything like it was possible. Most people do not. The helicopter, the flankers at 2,100 meters, the commander at 3,100. He turned to look at her. "Who are you?" "Really?" Yolanda considered the question, considered all the answers she could give, the lies she had told for 16 years, the truth she had buried so deep she sometimes forgot it herself. "I am someone who was given a gift," she said slowly, "and someone who spent a long time pretending that gift did not exist." "Why?" "Because gifts like mine come with costs." She looked at the rifle in her hands. "When people know what you can do, they want to use you, control you, turn you into a weapon they can point at their problems. I did not want to be a weapon. I wanted to be a person." O'Yelleran absorbed this in silence. Then he nodded. "I understand, and I will not tell anyone what I saw today, if that is what you want." Yolanda almost laughed. "Kendrick, half the base watched me shoot down a helicopter. I do not think secrets are an option anymore." The bunker door opened. Colonel Tan stood in the entrance, her civilian clothes now covered in dust and someone else's blood. Behind her, Captain Slaughter wore the expression of a man whose entire understanding of the world had been dismantled and rebuilt in a single morning. "Sergeant Pemberton," Tan said. "Command post." Now, they walked through a base transformed by violence. Craters where buildings had stood, vehicles still smoldering, soldiers moving with the mechanical efficiency of people who had not yet processed what they had survived. At the command post, a crowd had gathered. Officers, NCOs, soldiers who had found excuses to be nearby. Word had spread. Everyone wanted to see the weapons technician who had turned the tide of battle. Yolanda ignored them all, focused on putting one foot in front of the other, on keeping her face neutral and her hands steady. Inside the command post, a bank of monitors showed drone footage of the battlefield. Someone had compiled clips of her shots, the ridge positions falling, the helicopter spinning out of control, the enemy commander dropping at 3,100 meters. Colonel Tan addressed the room. "What you are about to hear is classified. Anyone who speaks of it outside this room will face immediate court-martial and federal prosecution." She paused, letting the weight of that threat settle. Sergeant First Class Yolanda Pemberton is a graduate of a program that does not officially exist, a program designed to identify and develop exceptional long-range shooting talent. She is one of the most skilled precision shooters this country has ever produced. Murmurs rippled through the assembled officers. "The shot that saved Staff Sergeant Voss 11 days ago was real," Tan continued. 3,820 meters. 4 targets. The longest confirmed kills in military history. And today, she added another impossible shot to that record. 3,100 meters. Variable wind. A target that believed himself beyond reach. Slaughter stepped forward. His earlier hostility had vanished, replaced by something that looked almost like awe. "I owe you an apology, Sergeant. I thought you were hiding something dangerous. I did not realize you were hiding something extraordinary." Yolanda said nothing. The door opened again. Voss entered, supported by a medic, but refusing a stretcher. His arm was freshly bandaged, his face pale from blood loss, but his eyes were clear and focused. He crossed the room slowly, stopped in front of Yolanda. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. "I knew it was you," he said quietly. "For the first moment I saw you. I knew." "How?" "Because I have been shot at by a lot of people. I know what it feels like when someone is trying to kill me." He paused. "But in that valley, when my captor started dying, it did not feel like that. It felt like someone was trying to save me. Like every bullet was placed with care, with precision, with something that almost felt like compassion." Yolanda felt something crack inside her, something she had kept frozen for 9 years. "I cannot let them kill you," she whispered. "I saw what they were about to do, and I could not just watch. You did not even know me. I did not have to know you. You were one of ours. That was enough." Voss reached out and took her hand. His grip was weak from exhaustion, but steady with conviction. I spent 11 days walking back to this base, he said. 11 days thinking about the person who saved me, wondering if I would ever find them, if I would ever get to say thank you. He squeezed her hand. Thank you, Sergeant Pemberton. Thank you for my life. The room was silent. Officers and soldiers alike watched as the ranger and the sniper stood together, two people connected by an impossible shot across an impossible distance. Colonel, tan kilirid her turoat. The question now is what happens next. Sergeant Pemberton, I asked you before the attack to make a choice. Full classification or control disclosure. She met Yolanda's eyes. Given what happened today, that choice has become somewhat more complicated. Yolanda looked around the room, at the faces watching her, at the monitors showing footage of what she had done, at Voss, still holding her hand. She had spent 16 years hiding, 16 years being nobody, 16 years pretending she was less than what she was. Maybe it was time to stop pretending. The choice, when it came, was easier than she expected. I am done hiding, Yolanda said. Whatever comes next, I will face it as myself. Slowly. There was something in her expression that might have been pride. Then we have work to do. The Pentagon will want a full debrief. Special Operations Command will have questions. And there will be paperwork. She almost smiled. There is always paperwork. The next several hours passed in a blur of activity. Yolanda gave her statement to 3 different officers, each one asking the same questions in slightly different ways. She described the shot that saved Voss in clinical detail, described today's battle with the same precision, watched their faces shift from skepticism to disbelief to reluctant acceptance. By evening, the base had begun to stabilize. Wounded were being evacuated. Damaged structures were being assessed. The dead were being prepared for transport home. Yolanda found a quiet moment outside the medical facility, watching the sun sink toward the mountains. The same mountains she had studied through her scope 1,000 times. The same mountains that had witnessed her secret and kept it for 9 years. Footsteps approached. She did not need to turn to know who it was. You should be resting, she said. Voss lowered himself onto the concrete barrier beside her, wincing as his wounded arm protested. I have been resting for 11 days. Involuntarily, he looked out at the sunset. Besides, I want to talk to you. Without an audience. What about? About what happens after this. He paused. Colonel Tan told me they want to bring you back into special operations. Training role. Helping identify and develop other shooters like you. She told me the same thing. Is that what you want? Yolanda considered the question. For 16 years, she had wanted only one thing. To be left alone. To do her job quietly and well. To honor her grandfather's memory by using the gift he had given her only when it truly mattered. But something had shifted. Something had broken open during the battle and could not be closed again. I think she said slowly that I've been hiding for so long I forgot what it felt like to be seen. She looked at Voss. When you walked through that gate asking about the woman who made the shot, I was terrified. Not of being caught, of being known. And now, I think maybe being known is not the worst thing that could happen. They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned orange and red and purple. Can I ask you something? Voss said eventually. You can ask. The shot in the valley. The one that saved me. He turned to face her. You said you saw what they were about to do. That you could not just watch. But you were 3,800 meters away. You could have looked away. Could have told yourself it was not your problem. Why did you take the shot? Yolanda thought about her grandfather, about the lessons he had taught her on those long afternoons in Montana, about the responsibility that came with being able to do what she could do. Because I could, she said simply. Because I had the skill to save you and the opportunity to use it. And because looking away would have made me someone I did not want to be. Voss nodded slowly. That is what I thought. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A challenge coin, she realized. Ranger's lead the way was embossed on one side, his unit crest on the other. I want you to have this. She took the coin, felt its weight in her palm. I did not do anything to earn this. You saved my life. You saved this base. He closed her fingers around the coin. In my book, you have earned everything. Before she could respond, A commotion near the command post drew their attention. Raised voices. The sound of someone protesting loudly. Dunmore. He was being escorted by 2 MPs, his hands not quite restrained but clearly not free either. His face was flushed with anger and fear. "This is outrageous," he shouted. "I am a chief warrant officer. I have 20 years of service. You cannot do this." Colonel Tan walked beside him, her expression cold and final. "Chief Warrant Officer Dunmore, you are being relieved of duty pending investigation into multiple charges. Falsified performance evaluations, misappropriation of credit for subordinates' work, conduct unbecoming, and cowardice in the face of the enemy." Dunmore sputtered. "Cowardice? I was. You were hiding on the floor of a bunker while Sergeant Pemberton defended this base." Tan cut him off. "Multiple witnesses have confirmed your behavior, including Sergeant O'Yelleran, who provided a very detailed statement." Dunmore's eyes found Yolanda across the compound. The hatred in them was pure and undiluted. But beneath the hatred, she saw something else. Fear. The fear of a small man who had spent his career making others feel smaller, finally facing the consequences. "This is not over," he spat. "You think you have won something. You have not won anything." The MPs led him away. His threats echoed off the blast walls until a door closed and silenced them. Voss watched him go. "That man made your life miserable for 2 years." "Yes. How does it feel?" Watching him fall, Yolanda thought about it. About the petty cruelties Dunmore had inflicted. The stolen credit. The demeaning comments. The constant effort to make her feel worthless. "It feels," she said carefully, "like something that should have happened a long time ago. But it does not feel like victory." She looked at Voss. Victory would have been him never having power over anyone in the first place. Voss smiled. "You are a better person than I am. I would be enjoying this." She allowed herself a small smile in return. "I did not say I was not enjoying it, just that it does not feel like victory." They watched the last light fade from the sky. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more decisions, more changes to a life she had kept carefully static for 16 years. But tonight, for the first time in longer than she could remember, Yolanda Pemberton did not feel like hiding. The formal debrief took place 3 days after the attack. A secure conference room in the command post had been converted into something resembling a courtroom. Pentagon officials sat behind a long table, their uniforms heavy with ribbons and stars. Colonel Tan stood to one side, her presence a silent endorsement. Captain Slaughter sat in the corner, taking notes on everything. Yolanda wore her dress uniform for the first time in years. It still fit perfectly. Some things did not change. The senior officer, a 2-star general named Hendricks, opened the proceedings. "Sergeant First Class Pemberton, you understand why we are here?" "Yes, sir. We have reviewed the evidence. Satellite imagery, drone footage, witness statements, ballistic analysis." He folded his hands on the table. "The shot that saved Staff Sergeant Voss has been confirmed at 3,820 meters. For targets neutralized, this exceeds the previous confirmed record by 280 meters. Yolanda said nothing. Additionally, Hendricks continued, "Your actions during the attack on FOB Shank have been documented and verified. Multiple enemy positions neutralized at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters. An enemy aircraft disabled with a single round. And an enemy commander eliminated at 3,100 meters in variable wind conditions." He paused. "Do you have anything to say?" She thought about all the things she could say. About Project Longbow. About the years of hiding. About the cost of being extraordinary in a world that wanted everyone to be ordinary. "I did what needed to be done, sir. Nothing more." Hendricks exchanged glances with the other officials. Then he nodded slowly. Project Longbow was terminated 9 years ago. Officially, it never existed. The participants were scattered, their records sealed, their abilities buried. He leaned forward. "We made a mistake. Sir, we had assets of extraordinary value. People with capabilities that could save lives and change outcomes. And we threw them away because some committee decided the program was too unconventional, too difficult to explain to oversight." He shook his head. Your actions have forced us to reconsider that decision. Colonel Tan stepped forward. What General Hendricks is saying, Sergeant, is that Special Operations Command wants to rebuild what we lost. A new program, properly funded, properly supported, and they want you to help lead it. Yolanda felt the weight of the offer settling onto her shoulders. Not just recognition, responsibility, the chance to find others like her and give them what she had never had. A place to belong, a purpose that did not require hiding. What would that look like, she asked. Training and evaluation, Tan said. Identifying candidates with exceptional potential. Developing techniques. Pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible. She met Yolanda's eyes. You would not be a weapon anymore. You would be a teacher. A teacher. Her grandfather had been a teacher, had spent decades sharing his knowledge with anyone willing to learn, had believed that skills were meant to be passed on, not hoarded. I have conditions, Yolanda said. Hendricks raised an eyebrow. Conditions. The candidates we select. They choose this path voluntarily. No one gets forced into becoming what I became. And when they finish, they get to decide how their skills are used. They do not become tools for politicians to deploy without conscience. The room went quiet. Pentagon officials were not accustomed to enlisted soldiers making demands. But Hendricks surprised her. He nodded. Those terms are acceptable. We learned from our mistakes with Longbow. This time we do it right. The meeting continued for another hour. Details, logistics, timelines. By the end, Yolanda had agreed to a transfer to Fort Bragg, where the new program would be based. She would retain her rank, but operate outside normal command structures. Report directly to Special Operations Command. Answer to people who understood what she was and what she could do. When it was over, she found O'Yelleran waiting outside. I heard, he said. You're leaving. In 2 weeks. She studied his face. You can come with me. The new program will need support staff. People who understand the technical side. People I trust. His eyes widened. You would want me. You kept my secret when you could have exposed me. You spotted for me during the worst firefight of your life. You stood up to Dunmore when it would have been easier to stay silent. She put a hand on his shoulder. I would be honored to have you on my team. O'Yelleran straightened. Then I am in. Wherever you're going, I am going. They walked together through the base that had been her home for 2 years. Past the maintenance bay where she had hidden in plain sight. Past the bunker where she had revealed herself. Past the medical facility where Voss was finally being discharged. He saw them coming and met them halfway. I hear congratulations are in order, he said. Teacher Pemberton has a nice ring to it. It feels strange, she admitted. I have spent so long being invisible. Now everyone knows my name. Voss smiled. You will get used to it. And for what it's worth, I think you are exactly the right person for this job. He extended his hand. If you ever need a reference, someone to tell the brass what you are capable of, you know where to find me. She took his hand. Where will you be? Back to the regiment. As soon as medical clears me for full duty. He squeezed her hand once before releasing it. But I meant what I said. Anytime you need me, I am there. No questions asked. I owe you that much. You do not owe me anything. I owe you everything. And Declan Voss pays his debts. She watched him walk away, still moving carefully but stronger than he had been. In 11 days, he had gone from dead to alive, from captive to free, from skeptic to believer, all because of a shot that should have been impossible. Master Sergeant Birch found her that evening, sitting on the same concrete barrier where she had watched the sunset with Voss. Heard you were leaving us, Birch said, settling beside her. Word travels fast. It is a small base. She was quiet for a moment. Your grandfather will be proud of you, Yo. Not because of the shooting, because of who you are becoming. Yolanda felt tears prick at her eyes. The first tears she had allowed herself in years. I wish he could have seen this. Maybe he did. Birch put an arm around her shoulders. Maybe he's been watching all along. 3 months later, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. The morning mist hung low over the long-range training facility, softening the edges of the world into something almost dreamlike. Yolanda stood at the observation platform, watching a line of candidates prepare for their first evaluation shoot. 12 of them had made it this far. 12 soldiers pulled from units across the Army, Marines, and Air Force. Each one had demonstrated exceptional potential during preliminary screening. Each one had volunteered knowing that success meant becoming something most people could not understand. O'Yelleran appeared at her shoulder, tablet in hand. Conditions are good. 6-mile-per-hour crosswind from the east. Visibility clear to 3,000 meters. Good. Let them show me what they can do. The first candidate stepped up to the firing line. A young lance corporal from Camp Pendleton named Reyes. She was 23 years old, had grown up hunting elk in the mountains of New Mexico, and she reminded Yolanda of herself at that age. Quiet, focused, carrying something behind her eyes that most people never noticed. Reyes settled into position, found her breathing rhythm, took her shot. The target at 1,500 meters registered a hit. Center mass. Not bad, O'Yelleran murmured. Yolanda said nothing. She watched Reyes adjust for the next distance. 1,800 meters. Another hit. 2,100. Hit. 2,400. Hit. The other candidates watched with growing amazement. This was beyond standard marksmanship. This was the kind of shooting that separated the exceptional from the extraordinary. 2,700 meters, O'Yelleran called out. Reyes took her time. Read the wind. Made her adjustments. Fired. Hit. The candidates erupted in quiet murmurs. Yolanda allowed herself a small smile. After the evaluation, she pulled Reyes aside. Where did you learn to shoot like that? My grandmother. Reyes's voice was soft but steady. She was a competition shooter back in the 70s. Won nationals 3 times before anyone took women seriously in sport. She taught me everything. Yolanda nodded slowly. Grandparents have a way of seeing potential that others miss. She walked back to the main facility, where Colonel Tan was waiting with a folder of updates. 12 candidates, Tan said. 8 of them show genuine promise. 3 are exceptional, and 1. She nodded toward the range where Reyes was helping another candidate adjust their stance. 1 might be better than you were at her age. Then we're doing something right. They walked together through the facility that had become Yolanda's new home. State-of-the-art equipment, dedicated staff, resources that Project Longbow had never enjoyed. This time, the Pentagon was serious about doing things properly. A letter arrived for you, Tan said, handing over an envelope. From Afghanistan. Yolanda recognized the handwriting immediately. Voss. She opened it as Tan continued down the hallway, giving her privacy. Sergeant P., the letter began. I know you prefer Yolanda now, but old habits die hard. I wanted you to know that I told my unit the full story. About the valley. About the shot. About the woman who saved my life from nearly 4 kilometers away. Some of them did not believe me at first. Now, they keep asking when they can meet you. She smiled and kept reading. I also wanted you to know that I carry your memory with me on every mission. Not just gratitude. Inspiration. You showed me that impossible is just a word people use when they have stopped trying. I try to remember that when things get hard. There was more. Updates about his recovery. Stories about his team. Small details about a life that had almost ended in a valley she could still see when she closed her eyes. The letter ended simply. Thank you for my life. Thank you for showing me what courage really looks like. And thank you for finally letting the world see who you really are. Yours, Declan. She folded the letter carefully and tucked it into her pocket. That evening, after the candidates had been dismissed and the facility had gone quiet, Yolanda walked to the long-range course alone. She carried her rifle, the same rifle that had been confiscated and returned, the same rifle that had made the impossible shot. She settled into position at the 3,000-meter line. Downrange, a target waited in the fading light. The same distance she had shot in the valley. The same distance that had changed everything. She did not need to make this shot. There was no life to save, no battle to win, no secret to keep. But some rituals were about more than necessity. She thought about her grandfather, about the afternoons they had spent together, learning to read the wind and trust the process. About the promise she had made at his grave to use her gift only when it truly mattered. She thought about Voss, walking through the gates of FOB Shank after 11 days of being dead. About the question that had unraveled her carefully constructed life. She thought about Dunmore, who had tried to make her small and failed. About Slaughter, who had hunted her and learned to respect her. About O'Yellerin, who had seen her truth and chosen loyalty over doubt. She thought about the candidates sleeping in barracks nearby. Young soldiers with extraordinary potential, waiting to become something the world did not know it needed. Breathe. Squeeze. Follow through. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. 3 seconds of silence. Then the distant ping of metal on metal echoed across the range. Center mass. Yolanda lowered her rifle and looked up at the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, her grandfather was watching. She was certain of it now. She was no longer hiding, no longer pretending to be less than what she was. She had become what he always knew she could be. Not a weapon, not a secret, a teacher, a leader, a woman who had finally let herself be seen. If this story of hidden strength and the courage to finally be seen moved you, drop a comment and tell us your favorite moment. Or share if you have ever known someone whose real abilities were hidden until the moment they were needed most. She packed up her rifle and walked back toward the lights of the facility. Tomorrow, there would be more candidates to evaluate, more potential to discover, more impossible shots to teach. And for the first time in 16 years, Yolanda Pemberton could not wait to see what came next.